So I know in November we had a meeting and we discussed some of our priorities, but bills really had not been filed yet. So hopefully, if I have time in the next week, I'm going to put stuff together. I'll email it out to everyone so everyone can look at it. If there's any questions or you think we need to add anything, let me know, because then I have to submit that to the board. The board approves it, and then it kind of goes to the other chambers, and then they kind of, all the chambers kind of create one document for Brevard Days, which it will be in March virtually this year. We will not be going up to Tallahassee because of COVID. There's lots of protocols and things going on. And I feel from what I've seen, they're changing kind of day to day. So it's kind of crazy. But at least we can have a Brevard Day. At least our voices will be heard with our delegation and the legislature on what is needed in our community. So look for that email in, I would say, a week or so. Jen will help me. If anyone has a strong legislative background and would like to assist, please shoot me a message. That would be greatly appreciated right now. So I'm going to kick it back to Jen and just thank you everyone for being here today.
Thank you, Ashley. Thanks for your commitment to another year of being our chair. It is a second full-time job, so we appreciate you. Cheryl, just hit the record button on this meeting. So for everyone that's on Zoom and the few that are here in person, this is a recorded meeting. No pressure, Brian. But we like to do that because we are in a season of COVID still, and we like to record these and push them out to the entire partnership so that the partners that couldn't be here this morning, whether they're sick, they're in our thoughts, or they're recovering, or for any other reason, we want to make sure that this information gets out to them, because we could all use a spirit of optimism going into the new year. I was fortunate enough to hear a little bit of a sneak preview of this presentation yesterday morning at the City of Coco's Economic Development Breakfast. And so what you're about to hear is awesome information. I have Brian's bio, but I'd like to be more conversational and let him introduce himself. Brian's a friend. He's a great guy. He does great work for the Economic Development Commission. I'm going to let him introduce his title and talk to you a little bit about his background, because it's a really unique background. I want him to talk about it. And then we'll launch, while he's doing that, I'm going to launch his PowerPoint and we'll get started if everyone's ready. Welcome. Then again, this entire meeting is dedicated to Geo Roper. So we appreciate you being here. Brian, take it away.
Well, thank you, Jen, and good morning, everybody. Jen was my first meeting when I joined the EDC, and this office was still being renovated, so I'm always happy when you'll have me back.
Yeah.
For the record, I think nobody's worked harder during the pandemic than Jen for her membership, and really the county as a whole. You know, that's something that I think the community's really benefited from her leadership. So thank you for that, Jen.
I'll pay you later.
Under the table, that's right. So I know you've got some programming coming up about setting realistic goals for 2021, and I think I can help this morning. One of my goals or resolutions this year.
Are they weight loss goals?
Well, you know what? The diet starts tomorrow.
Okay.
Right?
So, all right, good.
But one of my resolutions this year is to exercise more gratitude in my life, and I think this presentation should help everybody on the call and in person here to be grateful that we live and work on Florida Space Coast, because there are a lot of reasons for optimism. 2020 was obviously a tough year for all of us. The whole country's going through it. If you're going to be going through it, you might as well be doing it here, where thanks to some steps that were taken about 10 years ago, our economy is more resilient and diversified. And that's one of the things that's really going to help some of the industries like retail and restaurant and travel and tourism recover, because we've had a strong core of manufacturing jobs and engineering jobs that were deemed essential during this whole time. They're paying great wages, and there's people moving to the area because of the fundamentals being stronger. So Jen's got a copy of this deck. I can give you a PDF that everybody can have.
I have it on here, so I'm going to email it out. It'll be emailed to the entire partnership along with the recording of this meeting. So I'm going to let him take over now. I'm going to fade into the background. It's all about him and the great information he has. This is the forward button, and you know where the back button is. Let's hear some good reasons to be optimistic.
Absolutely. So a little background on EDC. I see a lot of familiar faces on the call, so I won't spend much time on this. We're the county-wide economic development organization. At the state level, it's Enterprise Florida. At the county level, the public-private partnership of the EDC is what oversees strategy and the day-to-day blocking and tackling of trying to retain and create jobs here. in the community. We're only as good as our board of directors and executive committee and our councils and our volunteers, and that includes partners like Jen and the chamber. You know, myself, I come from a background of public affairs and worked for 3 members of Congress, the governor of Nevada in his economic development organization. And I'm a Brevard resident by choice. My wife, daughter, and now 2 daughters have decided that this is, thank you, yeah, go grad.
A newborn in a pandemic.
That's right. That's the Corona boom. Holmes Medical is December was their busiest month in years, so a lot of idle time for folks. But you know, we're here because I really think the Space Coast is the place to be. I've had the privilege of working for the Texas delegation and Nevada delegation. From a perch in Washington, D.C., you really get to see what's going on in the country. I don't think the upside is any better than here in Brevard County. I honestly mean that, and you'll see the data, I think, bears that out. You know, we've from Titusville to Palm Bay, we've got employers big and small in our membership. And one of the things I always say is, you know, when we go through all the effort to recruit, you know, Lockheed Martin or Northrop Grumman or Blue Origin, you know, we don't want them to stay cooped up on their campus. We want them to be engaged in the community, and it's not just for their own interests, but the interest of you know, generating a strong pipeline of workforce here, you know, addressing quality of life issues, all those things. You know, we want the employers to be involved, and I think the EDC is a great vehicle at that level for doing that. One of the reasons, you know, I mentioned that we're a resilient community is because we've faced pretty tough challenges before, and as recently as a decade ago. And you know, the community had faced things like the Apollo program winding down, and you know, unfortunately, the shuttle program winding down happened at the same time of the Great Recession. So I'll show you some of the data here to give you some perspective as to why things might be different this time around. Kind of similar back in 2006 as to the beginning of last year. You know, we had full employment, you know, very low unemployment rate. Anybody that wanted a job had a job. Things were moving along pretty well. Fast forward 4 years later, we're up to nearly 12% unemployment, thanks to the shuttle going down and the recession. I'll give you a scope of the shuttle's impact on the community. Mid 2000s, you had 16,000 shuttle program employees. Direct job loss from the shuttle winding down is nearly 7,600. Indirect job loss over 14,000. So you know, you've got over 20,000 jobs gone, and that's a huge hole to try to fill. This is one that's pretty telling, and I think for people who have been longtime residents, they know this all too well. Median sales price was nearly 230K in 2006. Went down to under 90K. You know, that's a lot of home equity that just vanished. You know, that's people's, you know, their life work and their life savings gone. You don't want to have people underwater in their house. In terms of fighting back, you know, this did not happen by accident, and it took a concerted effort. You know, partners like the chamber, the EDC, leaders in the county, to give you an idea of how this sort of happened, and we were able to claw back and become a real success story. You know, you had Linda going out to Hawthorne, California back in 2005 when the shuttle was announced that it was going away, and she was meeting with Elon Musk before anybody knew what SpaceX was, or certainly before he was the richest man in the world now. And told them that you should be launching here. You know, we brought in some of the brain power here, have involved in Apollo and shuttle over the years, and knew what the next thing was in the space program. And the EDC actually actively went to Lockheed Martin and Boeing and Northrop Grumman and said, hey, if you win the contract for the next spacecraft that NASA is going to back, you know, not only should you launch it here, you should build it here. So you know, it's a long game in terms of economic development. It's not always cut and dried, but it's one of those things where you can't unilaterally disarm and just, you know, hope for the best because we've got a nice community here. You know, everybody else is competing for these jobs and these companies, and you know, they're going to fight tooth and nail for it. So you can see these numbers over the years really are astonishing, and we're building on that success going into the new year. But you can see the roller coaster ride here that we were on. And I show this slide because for a long time we were behind the national average in terms of job growth and unemployment rate, and it took a lot to keep building successes and getting wins and get ahead. And you'll see the numbers are much better now this pandemic. people always ask me what that little dip there is in August of 2017. That was actually Hurricane Irma, so you can see the effect of a storm on the community. You know, these are some of the big names. I'll go into you know, some of these success stories a little later in the presentation. One thing to note is, you know, obviously we're creating a lot of high-wage jobs with these blue chip companies, but we've got over 500 manufacturers in Brevard County of all shapes and sizes, and you know, we make everything from medical instruments to computer chips to pleasure crafts. So we've really got a good mix of know-how and can-do here. In terms of punching above our weight, this is a theme I think you'll see through a lot of the data. But you know, we're a county now. The next census will probably have us over 610,000 people. But when you compare us to the other major metro areas in Florida, you know, you can look at the job creation and the capital investment. I mean, just you know, pound for pound, astonishing. And this is something that we're seeing in the data through this year. This is important. You know, I mentioned, you know, when we create these jobs, it just doesn't stay on that campus or within the pocketbooks of the people who are earning the money. It gets spread throughout the community. Housing's a big thing, transportation. People have bought a lot of cars last year as well. Food, this is going to help the restaurant industry come back because we've got people who stayed employed the entire year and are ready to get out of their house and go eat. You know, healthcare is a big, with Health First, is a big employer here as well. So, you know, this has an impact well beyond just those jobs and the capital investment. One of the reasons I mentioned that we've been better able to withstand a pandemic shutdown is look at the concentration of manufacturing employment that we had here in this city, in this, excuse me, community. You know, we're more than twice that of the other major metro areas, and we've actually been leading the state in manufacturing job growth over the past 4 years, and it's by a wide margin. So again, really punching above our weight. That's been reflected in the prestigious Milken Index, which looks at the best performing cities where America's jobs are created and sustained. And you can see how well we've been doing over the recent years. We jumped 47 places from 2018 to 2020 into the top 10. And the cities that we jumped over include, you know, Nashville, Tennessee, Spartanburg, South Carolina, where they make more BMWs than Germany does. A lot of really dynamic communities that get a lot of you know, get a lot of media, and we're right there in the thick of them. And if you look at this top 10, you've got Austin, which obviously everybody talks about, Silicon Valley, Orlando. Unfortunately, is probably not going to stay up there in the top 10 given the year they've had. But you know, Boise, Dallas. I've got a lot of experience actually in Reno, Nevada, and it kind of informs my outlook with how quickly the reputation of a community can change. Because you know, Reno, as recently as you know, 6 years ago, was kind of the punchline of a joke. You know, they're calling it the Detroit of the West, and that was not a compliment. And Reno, through, you know, sound economic development, was able to lure the Tesla Gigafactory there. That's the first Tesla Gigafactory. They make all the batteries for Tesla cars, the powertrains for the Model 3s. And Tesla invested $7 billion there and really changed the reputation of Reno. Created 10,000 jobs, and Reno's become this sort of funky Western Austin right now, and it's a real success story. So I've seen the power of economic development and how quickly the reputation of a community can change. This Milken Index is something that we used for our current competition to get the U.S. Space Command HQ to the community. This is the Joint Combatant Command. It's not to be confused with Space Force. Space Force would feed into U.S. Space Command as do the other branches of the military. But you can see how we compare to the other finalists in that group. You know, we're in the top 10, number 5 in job growth in the country, number 9 in high-tech industries, and 10 in high-tech GDP. And all these other communities are claiming to have, you know, aerospace and defense contractors, but when you actually look at the data, they're well behind us. So I think we've got a good case to make. One of the things I always like to say, you know, we kind of go back and forth between number 1 and number 2 on this list, but we're the most industry diversified economy in the state, which is really something for a place that's called the Space Coast. You would think we're a one-trick pony, but that's not the case. This is an illustration. I know people on this call don't need to see this. They've experienced it, but You can see on Jen, I'm supposed to fix that slide. That January 19 means year over year. So that was job growth on the left from January 19 to January 20th, 2020. And you can see things were humming right along in the economy. You know, that nationally was good. You can see Florida's creating a lot of jobs. And, you know, the spring hit and not only reversed all those gains, but, you know, went in the opposite direction and even then some. This is what the job losses looked like locally. And if you remember the slides from the Great Recession, it took us about 4 years to get to 12% unemployment. Whereas here from March to April, we went in 1 month. I mean, that is a jarring hit to the economy. But you can see we've been recouping those jobs. They're not necessarily all the same jobs, and I'll show that in another slide. But they're jobs that will help bring back those jobs that have been lost. So we're almost back to where we were. And you know, 2019 was a very good year. So you know, this is an example. We had a high bar to clear, but we're almost back there. This is kind of another view of the roller coaster we've been on in terms of unemployment. But as I mentioned before, in the past, you know, the past 10 years, we were always behind the state and national average and our neighbors. But you can see we're actually below everybody else. Poor Orlando, you know, when you're so overweight in travel and tourism, and you have the largest single site employer in the country in Disney World, you know, lay off a lot of people, that explains what they've experienced. But you can see, you know, compared to the rest of the state, and again, these are dynamic, growing metro areas in Florida. You know, we're faring better than most. Well, this is a stat we've been tracking some of these other, you know, peer or aspirational peer metro areas in the country, and we were actually at the top of this list the other month, but you know, minor adjustment. These are dynamic economies, and we're right there with them. So this is the slide that I wanted to kind of get into because it shows what's happened during the pandemic shutdowns. You can see the low wage earners, you know, nationally and in Florida have really taken the brunt of this because, you know, those are the retail, restaurant, travel, and tourism jobs. You know, and I would wager to say this is educated inference that our hit of the 10.4% decrease is half of that of the national average because we've had growth in the middle wage and high wage jobs, and you know, those folks were spending money in the community throughout the shutdown, and it's pretty astonishing to see, you know, that 3% and 10% growth in those good wages right there, you know, throughout the pandemic, and that was, you know, largely generated by our aerospace and manufacturing industries. This is, you know, when compared to what we went through in the last pandemic, you know, our median sales prices are at record highs for single-family homes and condos, and you know, again, that's equity that people are getting in their houses. And if you bought a house early in the year, you already got equity in it. The inventory is low because everybody wants to stay here or move here. And that's something that we recently saw with U-Haul and the United Van Lines track where their trucks are going. And United Van Lines has the Space Coast is the #7 destination in the country. U-Haul had it in the top 25. You know, people are leaving, you know, places like New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Illinois, California to go to destinations like Florida, and I think that's going to continue, especially post-COVID. We track taxable sales as a sign of economic growth. You know, 2019 was a really good year, and you can see taxable sales are up year over year in building investment. You know, those are people making big bets on Florida, and it's good across the state, but you can see we're at the top of that. Business investments up as well, and that's not the case everywhere else. This was the snapshot at the height of the pandemic, where we were still trailing in terms of revenue, but we were the only community in the state of Florida that was positive in building investment and business investment. And you can see those numbers are actually pretty good. But like I said, 2019 was a good year. Looking ahead, AERION Supersonic, you know, this was an announcement that we made in the spring, and you know, during a normal year, this would have been big news. It's a global headquarters, engineering, R&D, manufacturing facility. 675 jobs with an average annual salary of $109K a year. That's a lot of discretionary income in the community. But this happened during a pandemic, so I think it shows that an innovative aerospace company like AERION, sees good things for the long term here in the Space Coast. Embraer was one of the first wins that we got when we were coming out of the shuttle and in the Great Recession, and this is the gift that keeps on giving. They've expanded here 6 times since, and you can see they're diversifying their executive jets into medevac. But these are great jobs, and it's not just engineering jobs. We've got production jobs. Embraer actually hired 4 recent graduates out of O'Galley High School's aviation program, which is something the EDC helped seed and contributed the jet that the students work on there. So instead of students looking at going into debt and distance learning at an expensive university in some cases, you've got these kids that came out with marketable skills from high school, are now getting paid, getting great benefits, and Embraer is going to take care of their continuing education. So they could end up being in the aerospace industry their entire fulfilling careers. L3 Harris, here's a company. We had L3 and we had Harris for a long time. The 2 companies merged. It's a Fortune 500 company that's their global headquarters is here, and they've got 2 division headquarters here that do nothing but the most innovative space assets around. And this was a company that we were able to point to in our pitch for U.S. Space Command and say, hey, we're not just about launch, but we're making payloads and all the stuff that the Air Force is going to use, the Air Force and U.S. Space Command and Space Force are going to use to protect the space domain and our assets up there. So we've got a lot of brain power here, and it's almost an embarrassment of riches trying to cover it all, because L3 Harris added 450 jobs in the past year, and that's like a whole new company right there. They're probably up to 8,000 people locally. Lockheed Martin Fleet Ballistic Missile HQ relocated from Sunnyvale, California, the heart of Silicon Valley. They're here in Titusville. This was an example of something where the EDC has a very active military relations program in conjunction with Cocoa Chamber and MAC. We actually reversed a decision by the BRAC list to move the Naval Ordnance Test Unit, and because that happened, not only did we preserve those jobs locally, but that led to the Lockheed Martin move. And you've got 350 new jobs that moved from California. And they've got 35 acres up in Titusville, and they're gonna expand that campus. There's some plans to announce that shortly. Blue Origin, and these numbers are just eye-popping, because what was promised initially was much lower, and would have been great for the county in of itself. But you've got now the 2nd richest man in the world investing $1 billion in capital here, and so if he thinks it's a good bet to spend his money here, I think we're doing something right. Nearly 500 full-time employees. You look at that, 114K average wage. If you haven't been by the facility recently, I recommend driving by it. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and those rockets are going to be kind of the size of Saturn V, and Jeff Bezos is talking about creating a road to space. So we're the starting point for that, and that's a pretty spectacular thing. Boeing moved their Space and Launch Division headquarters to Titusville from Arlington, Virginia. So we're taking from the West Coast, we're taking from the DC metro area. A lot of people think it's a good place to be right now. And this is important because Boeing is manufacturing the Starliner crew vehicle, which will be tested this year here in Brevard. So again, we're not just sending things into space, we're building them and engineering them here in Brevard with our know-how. Firefly, it's not all about the big companies. This is a startup out of Austin, Texas, and they're reaching some critical milestones, and they're planning a manufacturing facility and launch facility here locally. So you look at what's happening in commercial space, and it's a pretty cool time up to the Space Coast. So with all this good news that's happening, there's still more on the horizon. Besides the birth of my daughter in December, I think this is probably the highlight of the year for a lot of people. And again, this was something that the seeds of this were planted 15 years ago, right? So this doesn't happen by accident or overnight. This is a slide from our presentation to the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for the finals of the U.S. Space Command headquarters. This was really a full court press from the community and the state. The EDC has been overseeing this process. I was supposed to have paternity leave during December and ended up working on 2 site visits. My daughter was actually born on December 8th, so I was in the hospital kind of monitoring that from afar. But you know, we had the governor, the lieutenant governor, Rep. Bill Posey, Rep. Michael Waltz, you know, great support from the state and the local community. Scott Race from City of Titusville. We really had great support from Space Florida. They were outstanding partners in all this. And the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force said that this was a really well done, very professional presentation. And he sits through a lot of them, so he said they're not always the case. But you know, you can see Governor Ron DeSantis there, Bill Posey. They joined virtually, and that decision should be forthcoming. And it's been designed to be a very transparent and data-driven process with the Secretary of the Air Force, Barbara Barrett, making this decision shortly. All during the year, the business development team of the EDC has been very busy. We're working projects every day. And you know, again, this is companies and people betting on the Space Coast for the long term. You know, commercial real estate isn't the EDC's bread and butter in terms of mixed use and you know, retail and hotels and whatnot, but you know, we're generating this economic activity. And well, again, all during the pandemic, you've got like a baker's dozen of these hotels and mixed use town centers happening, you know, north to south in the county. I think you're really going to see the spine of the county change along 95 with some pretty impressive you know, mixed use projects that would, you know, be the envy of any community, I think. One of the challenges that we're going to try to address, you know, this was supposed to be our 2020 project. Obviously, that got a little sidelined, but you know, how do we brand and market ourselves? You know, and sometimes that's an aspirational thing, and sometimes it's a very practical thing because we're generating all these jobs that require high tech engineering know-how, and you know, we're not going to produce all those people, though FIT and UCF and UF do a good job of that. But you know, we've got to draw engineers from all over the country, and we're doing that. But you know, how do we describe ourselves, you know, to outsiders? You know, I talk about culturally competent. You know, I mentioned I work for the Texas delegation. Nobody's more culturally competent than a Texan. You know, if you talk to a Texan who's living in New York or DC or somewhere else, you know, their goal is always to get back to Texas, and they can't imagine why anybody else wouldn't want to be in Texas. And, you know, I think we should feel that way. You know, is this a place that you dream of leaving or returning to? You know, if your kids go off to school, are they thrilled to get out of here, or do they want to come back? You know, so part of this is, what do we want to be? You know, as we're growing, how do we retain what we all like about the community? And this is an effort that the EDC is going to try to champion along with our chamber partners and other stakeholders to try to you know, come up with a brand and a marketing campaign that, you know, reflects who we are, and everybody can feel is authentic and does a good job of conveying you know, what's desirable about the Space Coast. Are we a community of choice? So, you know, there's a lot I hope to feel good about here. You know, it's easy to get caught up in the news cycle. I'm a comms guy and a media guy, and I engage in my fair share of doom scrolling, but I think we're in good shape here, and hopefully everybody feels a little better about 2021 going forward.
Excellent job. We appreciate it. And I'm a comms girl, so you've got a couple of comms people sitting here. I'm going to end his slideshow, but if someone has a question on a specific slide, you can certainly let us know and we'll go back to it. I'm going to ask, because we are, you know, 32 people. Thank you so much for joining us on Zoom. But I want to just say, if you have a question for Brian, instead of going the chat route, well, here we go. We have some questions in the chat, so I'll try and monitor that. I'll start with Bart Getchins and then Tom Palmer. And then after that, if you have a question, just unmute your microphone and ask it directly to Brian, and we'll engage that way. And certainly we'll look at the other people behind us as well. So we'll start with Bart, whose question is, thanks to Brian, any mention of the new Amazon distribution center?
And yeah, Bart, at this point, major e-commerce distribution center, I believe, was approved by City of Cocoa 2 nights ago. At this point, I don't know in terms of an NDA, how much more we could say, but I think you could put two and two together.
So that was a wink. That was a wink. All right. How are we taking advantage of the train system?
I got this question yesterday, and everybody is worried about getting passed by as if it's an interstate. So the Bright Line is the first privately funded rail line in the country since the creation of Amtrak. So you're talking about decades. And it's a very capital intensive project, and we want it to succeed. But I think, again, it's a bet on Florida there. And for now, the proof of concept business model is they want to move people from South Florida to Central Florida to go to the resorts and Disney World, whatnot. Obviously, we think we have a good case for the Cocoa Beach and the ports and whatnot. But they need to kind of get the basic business model and get some revenue and cash flow going. I think it'll be an obvious stop for them to put something, likely in Cocoa, give access to the port. It would be pretty appealing, obviously, as residents, for us to be able to just park and ride and go to Orlando Airport, where they've invested in substantial infrastructure. But clearly, it would be a good way to bring people to Port Canaveral and get them going once that industry is back up and running. So I think we'll see it. I'm not particularly concerned. And when you look at all those developments that you see in the pictures in that one slide happening around the county, these are national developers, right? And they're not saying, well, the Space Coast looks like a good place to be. They're doing their due diligence, and the financials say that this is a place that they should invest. So we're seeing a lot of developers come in here because the upside is here as opposed to other places. So I think we'll eventually see a stop here and maybe more. But
and to piggyback, Jen had asked about Cocoa being a stop. Is that kind of the first in line?
That's what I'm hearing.
Okay.
And again, I'm not deeply involved in this, but it's it's a capital intensive business model. They've got to do their main thing first, and then you start adding to that. So we want to see them succeed. But I think Cocoa would probably be the natural stop, first stop.
First stop. So with that, anyone else that has a question, if you'll just unmute and ask Brian, and we'll do our best to answer your questions, or anyone who has a question.
Hey, Brian, it's Sarah Allman from BPS. Great presentation. Thank you for the info. Excuse my dog. I had a question about the slide that mentions like the cultural relevance. What are your plans to kind of develop? I know you said you're going to work with chambers, but are there committees? What people in the community are you reaching out to?
Sure.
I know you have a very impressive background from where you live, but how are we as Brevardians going outside of our own ideas to provide something that we might not even be familiar with?
So originally, Sarah, thanks for the question. By the way, Dr. Mullins was a big part of our presentation for U.S. Space Command, and really the military's putting a big emphasis on quality of life in terms of military families and schools. So Brevard public schools are a huge asset for our community. But to answer your question, originally we were looking at some sort of survey, and we wanted community input to make sure the survey was asking the right questions. We're now exploring a process that is more about community storytelling through some focus group like gatherings. And so I think ultimately that's going to be a more effective path for us. We're still kind of looking at who's going to do that. We've been in talks with one firm with ties to the area, but that might be something that we open up with an RFP. But I think it's going to be a good exercise that produces something more than just a logo, right? It's going to help us, think about, who we are, who we want to be, how we talk about that. So I based on my background, I think that's an informative way to do a lot of things and allows you to strategize beyond just, like I said, marketing and branding. But that's kind of what we're looking at, and certainly we'd want to pull in, folks like you to talk about, what if you're from here, why you stayed. If you're from somewhere else, why did you come? That's sort of storytelling.
Yeah, it's very exciting. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
Who else has got a question for Brian? Thank you, Mark Marquette. Can always count on you. Who else has a question? Anybody for Brian? Okay, well, so I just want to follow up with one final thing. Thank you for the work that you do and that the EDC does. The Chamber's been kept somewhat in the loop for the U.S. Space Command headquarters fight. MAC has certainly done its job through the Chamber to try and state the case. And so we're excited to see what comes down from that. We're thinking maybe next week, right? By next week, knock on wood.
Into the nitty gritty. I think, there's a lot of well-respected people, respect for both sides of the aisle. One of the good things that Florida is going for is bipartisan support. So I think, and the fact that we have the number of electoral votes that we have helps as well. So I think the recommendation will be handed down. It'll be ultimately up to the next administration. But I think even if we were to be tapped and for some reason the decision was reversed, I actually think we'll be in line for some other opportunities with space defense. Yep.
Last call. Any questions? Make sure there's nothing in the chat that I missed. All right. Well, Brian, thank you so much. It's always good to hear from the EDC. Again, appreciate the work that you do. Ashley, do you want to just touch on the date and the speaker for the next one so people can get it on their calendars now?
Sure. I don't have the date on, let's see. February 5th is our next meeting at 8 a.m. and we will have Sheriff Ivy joining us to give us an update on things going on in Brevard County in his wheelhouse.
Yes, and we'll definitely keep you up to date, right, on Tallahassee and what's going on there.
Yes, yeah, and I'll send out an email about legislative stuff as well to everyone.
Awesome. And like we mentioned, we'll send out this presentation. It has been recorded as well as the slide deck. And if anyone has questions for Brian, his contact information will be listed. So please reach out. Again, appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Final announcement I want to make chamber-wide is that we have our annual gala. It's our 53rd annual gala. It is happening in person and online. So like most of our events in 2021. So it's up to your level of comfortability and of course, whether or not you're sick. So that'll be on Friday, January 22nd. Starts at 6 o'clock. It's going to be at the Hilton Cocoa Beach Oceanfront. We are limiting capacity. So it will be limited to the first 100 guests. We have several great sponsors. Bart's on here. I want to thank FPL for being our platinum sponsor. And of course, all the other business partners that have stepped up to make this event happen. We're going to install our board of directors. We're going to give away a great award to a very deserving organization in the community. And we're just going to try and have some fun. It's been a heck of a year and we have a lot of things to go over and celebrate and things to look forward to in 2021. So if you're interested in coming in person, we definitely need your RSVP online. There is an online option to view as well for a lower cost. So please make sure you register now. Again, that's Friday, January 22nd. And with that, that does it for us. So thank you so much for attending. Thank you to the people that came. And if you have any questions, like I said, Brian's contact information will be listed and we'll go from there. So thanks everyone. Have a great weekend. Stay healthy.
Thank you.